Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The night had a quiet kind of magic to it, the kind that doesn't need music or words. The lamp beside the bed glowed softly, painting the room in amber light. The world outside was asleep, but inside, everything felt alive: the air, the silence, and the space between them. She stood by the window, her reflection shimmering faintly in the glass. Her husband watched her from across the room, his gaze lingering a second longer than usual. It wasn't a look of mere admiration, it was something deeper, a recognition, a reminder of the love they had built and the spark that still burned beneath years of togetherness. When their eyes met, the distance between them disappeared without a word. His smile carried a quiet strength, the kind that once made her heart race in their early days. She felt her pulse quicken, not because of what he said, but because of what he didn't. The silence was electric, a bridge made of unspoken emotions. He took a step closer, slow and steady. The faint rustle of his footsteps made her chest tighten. She could feel his presence before he even touched her, that familiar warmth, that steady energy that always made her feel safe. For a moment, time slowed. The ticking clock faded, and all that remained was the rhythm of their breathing. She could smell his cologne, faint and familiar, like a memory revisited. Her heart whispered a truth she couldn't deny, that love, real love, never fades, it only deepens with time. As his hand brushed gently against hers, the world seemed to stand still. It was a quiet touch, but it carried years of trust, longing, and unspoken affection. And in that closeness, before a word was spoken, both of them knew something was about to happen. Something tender. Something powerful. Something that would remind them both why they fell in love in the first place. The night wasn't just another night. It was the beginning of something rediscovered, a spark reignited under the soft light of love. The air between them seemed to hum, not with words, but with all the things they wanted to say and couldn't. She turned slightly, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear, trying to steady her breath. "You're staring again," she said softly, her voice somewhere between teasing and nervous. He smiled faintly, stepping closer. "Can you blame me?" The way he said it made her look up. There it was, that tone, gentle yet full of meaning. Her heart skipped in quiet rebellion. For months, they had drifted in the comfort of routine, shared dinners, silent mornings, the endless rhythm of ordinary life. But tonight felt different, as if the air itself had changed. "I thought you'd be working late," she whispered, her fingers brushing the edge of the window curtain. "I was," he said, moving close enough for her to feel the warmth of his presence. "But something told me home needed me more tonight." Her lips parted, but no words came. He wasn't just talking about the house, he was talking about her. And she knew it. For a few seconds, neither spoke. Their hands met by accident, a brush of skin that felt too deliberate to be coincidence. She didn't pull away. Instead, her breath hitched, her eyes tracing the faint smile that curved on his lips. Inside her chest, something stirred, memories of when love was new, when every look was a promise. She tried to steady herself, but his closeness undid every layer of calm she had built. He reached up, tucking her hair gently behind her shoulder. "You still get quiet when you're nervous," he murmured, his voice low. "And you still notice everything," she replied, her voice trembling just enough to betray her heart. Their eyes locked again. No rush, no grand gesture, just stillness and the steady rhythm of two souls remembering how to be near. The moment lingered. Then, almost without thinking, he lifted her hand to his chest. She could feel his heartbeat, strong, steady, and real. For her, it was enough to remember that love, even when quiet, was alive. Neither spoke. But in that small gesture, the night whispered everything they couldn't say aloud. The air grew heavier, like the room itself was holding its breath. Outside, the night whispered softly through the open window, brushing against the curtains. Inside, two hearts trembled under the weight of something neither could name. She stepped back slightly, her eyes lowering, trying to build a wall she no longer believed in. "We shouldn't," she murmured, though even she could hear the weakness in her voice. He took a slow breath. "I know." His tone wasn't defensive, it was aching. The kind of ache born not of guilt, but of longing restrained too long. For a moment, they said nothing. The silence between them was a living thing, pulsing, restless, fragile. She turned toward the table, pretending to fix a flower in the vase, her fingers trembling. He moved closer, every step measured, respectful, but unstoppable, like the tide meeting the shore. "You've changed," he said quietly. "You don't smile the way you used to." She froze. The honesty in his voice disarmed her. "Maybe because things changed between us," she replied, her tone barely above a whisper. He exhaled slowly, his eyes searching hers. "Things don't have to stay that way." Her gaze lifted. The look they shared then, it wasn't new, it wasn't sudden. It was old, the familiar, a spark buried under the ashes of daily life now flickering back to life. Her throat tightened. She wanted to step away, to find refuge in logic, in what was safe, predictable, right. But love has a way of blurring the lines. His nearness felt like gravity, gentle but impossible to resist. Their hands brushed again. This time, neither moved. The warmth spread between them, slow and sure. Her breath caught, his hand lingered just long enough to feel her pulse racing beneath her skin. "Don't," she whispered, though her tone pleaded for the opposite. "I'm not doing anything," he said softly, but his eyes said everything. They stood there, hearts beating in sync, so close that one small step could have ended all restraint. The world around them faded, the ticking clock, the soft hum of night, until there was only this, the trembling distance between wanting and waiting. She drew in a shaky breath. His hand hovered, inches from her cheek. And then, a sudden knock at the door shattered the moment. Both froze. The spell broke, but the fire it left behind was undeniable. The knock faded into silence. Whoever had been at the door was gone now, leaving only the echo of what almost happened. She stood still, her back to him, trying to calm her racing heart. "Are you going to answer it?" she asked, though her voice came out faint, uncertain. He didn't move. "No," he said simply. "Not yet." Something in his tone made her turn. The soft lamplight caught the edge of his jaw, the steady rise of his chest, the quiet storm in his eyes. He looked at her like she was the only thing in the room that mattered, and maybe she was. Their gazes met again, and this time neither tried to look away. The air between them shimmered with unsaid words. Her breath trembled. She wanted to speak, to make a joke, to break the spell, but her voice betrayed her. He stepped closer, slow and careful, like a man afraid of breaking something fragile. "You're shaking," he whispered. She smiled nervously, folding her hands together. "Maybe it's the cold." He shook his head. "It's not." The honesty in his voice made her chest tighten. She felt every beat of her heart echo through the silence. He reached up, brushing a strand of hair away from her face. The touch was feather-light, almost hesitant, but it sent a ripple through her that she couldn't hide. Their laughter came next, quiet and nervous, the kind that escapes when words can't carry the truth. "This is crazy," she said, shaking her head slightly, though her smile told a different story. "I know," he replied, voice low. "But tell me you don't feel it too." The pause that followed said everything. She didn't need to answer, her eyes already had. The world narrowed to the space between them, inches, heartbeats, and breath. She could smell the faint warmth of his cologne, feel the electricity trembling in the air. His hand hovered near her cheek again, her pulse quickened, and for a fleeting second, the entire universe seemed to hold its breath. And just when the moment seemed ready to break, when closeness became unbearable, she took a step back, exhaling shakily. "We can't," she said softly. He nodded slowly, though his eyes still lingered on her like a promise. "I know," he said, his voice rough with feeling. "But I'm not sure I want to stop." The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was alive, trembling, waiting. The air was still trembling from what hadn't happened. Every heartbeat echoed louder than words. She turned away, clutching the edge of the table, trying to steady herself. But her hands wouldn't stop shaking, not from fear, but from everything she was trying not to feel. Then came the sound, a soft creak from the hallway. Both froze. Her eyes widened. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. He nodded, stepping quickly toward the door, opening it halfway. The hallway stretched into darkness, quiet, empty, almost too quiet. He stepped back inside, shutting it again with a sigh. "Probably nothing," he said. But her mind didn't agree. "It could have been Mia," she said, voice trembling. "She's been staying late lately, what if she saw something?" He looked at her, his face tightening. "Then we'll tell her nothing happened." "Didn't it?" she asked softly. The words hung in the air like smoke. He looked at her then, really looked. His expression softened, but his eyes burned with something she couldn't ignore. "It almost did," he said quietly. "And maybe that's the problem." Her throat tightened. The truth wasn't just about temptation, it was about everything they hadn't said in years, the distance, the longing, the ache of two souls that still recognized each other even when reason said they shouldn't. "Mia doesn't need to know," he said again, his tone gentle this time. This is ours." She wanted to argue, but her heart wouldn't let her. The tension that had filled the room earlier now returned, heavier, hotter, unstoppable. She tried to walk past him, to put space between them, but when she brushed against him, her resolve shattered like glass. Their eyes met again, and the silence that followed was deafening. Her voice trembled. "This isn't right," she said, even as her hands betrayed her, resting against his chest, feeling the familiar rhythm of his heartbeat beneath her palms. He didn't move, but the air between them vibrated with restrained emotion. "Maybe not," he whispered, "but tell me to stop, and I will." She looked up, her breath uneven, her heart betraying every word she wanted to say. For a moment, she tried to speak, to tell him no, to walk away, but her voice refused to come. Instead, there was silence. A silence so heavy it was almost a confession. And then, without a word, he took a slow step forward. The distance vanished. Her breath hitched, eyes closing for a heartbeat that felt eternal. The world outside faded. The knock, the fear, the doubt, all disappeared under the weight of what was about to happen. The moment balanced on the edge, between restraint and surrender, between what they should do and what their hearts had already decided. And just before the inevitable, the lights flickered, and everything went dark. The room was wrapped in silence, except for the sound of their breathing, uneven, charged, trembling with all that had been left unsaid. The flickering light made their faces seem alive with emotion, half shadow and half glow, as if the night itself couldn't decide which side of them to reveal. She stood frozen, her pulse pounding in her ears. His hand hovered near her arm, unsure whether to close the distance or let her go. They had been circling this moment for what felt like forever, the space between them a storm, the silence a confession neither could voice. "Say something," she whispered. He swallowed hard. "I can't," he said. "If I do, I won't be able to stop." The honesty in his voice struck her like thunder, terrifying and beautiful at once. Her eyes glistened. "Then maybe you should say it anyway." That broke him. He stepped closer, his voice barely a breath. "You still make me feel like the world stops when you look at me." She trembled, fighting the flood of emotion that rose within her. "And you still make me forget how to breathe," she whispered. That was it, the walls crumbled. The distance that had kept them apart dissolved into the truth of what they both already knew. This wasn't just desire. It was memory, love, forgiveness, and every quiet ache that had lived between them. He reached for her hand, gently, reverently, and she didn't resist. Their fingers interlocked, and for a heartbeat, it felt like everything broken between them was made whole again. But just as they leaned closer, ready to surrender to what felt inevitable, her phone lit up on the table. The screen glowed with a single name, Mia. The sight froze her. Reality came crashing in, sharp and sudden. Her chest tightened, his eyes followed hers to the phone. The message blinked again, "We need to talk." "I know." The color drained from her face. The air thickened, colder now. "What does she know?" he asked softly. She shook her head, unable to answer, tears glimmering in her eyes. The love that had once felt like salvation now felt like a secret they could no longer hide. He took a slow breath, voice steady but hollow. "Then maybe tonight changes everything." And with that, the world, and their hearts, stood on the edge of something that could never be undone. The night had fallen into stillness. The golden lamplight now glowed softly, its warmth stretching over the room like a gentle memory. She sat by the window, wrapped in silence, her mind tangled between what had been said and what had been felt. Her phone lay untouched beside her, the message from Mia still glowing faintly on the screen. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying away the remnants of a night that had changed everything. He stood by the doorway, his eyes on her. The distance between them felt smaller now, though the world around them seemed bigger, full of questions, of choices yet to be made. "You should rest," he said quietly. She turned toward him, her voice calm but full of weight. "I don't think I can." For a moment, he didn't speak. Then he walked over and sat beside her, close enough for their shoulders to touch. The simple nearness was enough, no words, no explanations. Just presence. After a long silence, she said softly, "We can't undo what we felt tonight." "I don't want to," he admitted. His voice was steady, but his eyes revealed the truth, he was scared too. "But I want to make it right. With you." Her heart trembled. The fear, the guilt, the longing, it all mixed into something fragile but real. She looked at him, her gaze tender, weary, but full of love. "Then start now," she whispered. He reached for her hand, their fingers interlocking once more, but this time, it wasn't forbidden or uncertain. It was quiet forgiveness, a promise reborn. The night around them felt lighter, the air gentler. The weight that had once pressed on their hearts began to fade. She leaned her head against his shoulder, and for the first time in a long time, she breathed freely. They didn't need grand gestures. The silence between them had become something sacred, a vow written not in words, but in understanding. Outside, dawn began to break, soft light spilling into the room, painting their faces in gold. It felt like a beginning, not an ending. Love, after all, isn't always perfect, but it's real. And tonight, they had found their way back to it.